Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, September 4th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. To start us off, we're told that today they celebrate Madonna del Pilone. That's in Polongheria, in Cuneo, in Italy. It's a shrine that was made because of a vow, and there's a place before, sort of a pool, but the vow was made because all the animals were protected from a plague in 1713. Likewise, this is looks like the Georgian Orthodox, but they celebrate the Georgian Mother of God in Arkhangelsk in Russia. So when the Shah Abbas of Persia conquered Georgia in 1622, he unfortunately sold off many church treasures. So a Russian merchant bought this icon for his private devotion. Meanwhile, in another town on the Volga River, about 150 miles northeast of Moscow, his employer dreamed of receiving a divine mission to take an icon to a new monastery that was to be in Arkhangelsk. So when Stephen returned to the town in 1629, he showed his purchase to his boss, to George, who realized it was the icon of his dream. So he took the icon far north to a monastery where it worked many miracles. It visited Moscow during an epidemic of bubonic plague. And then in 1658, the Russian Orthodox Church designated August 22nd, or September 4th in the modern calendar, as a celebration day in celebration of the Georgian, or this icon of the Mother of God, right? Unfortunately, the Soviet regime used that old monastery as a prison and a mental hospital. It's now a ruin, and the original icon has disappeared since then. Likewise, throughout the world, the Augustinians celebrate the Mother of Consolation, which is very interesting, sometimes also known as Our Lady of the Cincture. So there's two different stories, and one of them explains why the Augustinians celebrate Our Lady of Consolation or Lady of the Cincture. There's one tradition that says that the Apostle Saint Thomas the Apostle, got to Jerusalem too late to help Our Lady at her moment of death. But he made them open the tomb in order to contemplate the Mother of God. But of course, Mary wasn't there. She was assumed into heaven. And so the only thing that they found in the tomb was her belt or her cincture, which became an object of veneration. A second tradition, which is interesting, brings this origin of this devotion to Saint Monica, the mother of Saint Augustine. So we're told that Saint Monica was very sad after having lost her husband, and because Saint Augustine was not Saint Augustine yet, he was rather wild. And so she prayed to Our Lady to comfort her. And as a result, Our Lady appeared to Saint Monica and gave her this, she was told to imitate Our Lady, but in a particular way, to wear this cincture, which Our Lady gave to her, right? And so this is the story of why it's so near and dear to the Augustinian order. So what we have then is this, they brought this celebration. Again, another tradition says that the Greeks actually brought the cincture of Our Lady and celebrated it on August 31st. But from Constantinople, it went to France, and then from France elsewhere, and just a very sort of lengthy story. But in any event, in 1575, they began to celebrate actually the feast of Our Lady of the Cincture, right? And later on, the Holy See gave permission to celebrate it the first Sunday after the feast of St. Augustine, right? And in 1914, it was moved to the Saturday after the feast of St. Augustine. Nowadays, all Augustinians celebrate, throughout the world, celebrate Our Lady of Consolation on September 4th, right? It's also sometimes known again as Our Lady of the Cincture or the Belt, but again, because of that devotion and that tie with Saint Monica, according to at least one tradition. And we have a number of other celebrations today. We have Madonna Assunta in Carpi, in Modena, Emilia-Romagna. That cathedral was dedicated on this day in 1791. The Maria Bambina in Malta, the statue was crowned in 1921. Likewise, Our Lady Queen of Angels in Kolpolska in Greater Poland. Our Lady Queen of Angels, that icon was crowned in 1966. And the Virgen del Campo, Our Lady of the Field, the Virgin of the Field, in Cañete de las Torres in Córdoba, Andalusia, Spain, was crowned recently in 2010. And so that's what we're celebrating today in the Marian world on September 4th. For today's reading from the True Devotion to Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we will continue and finish this section about the life of Louis de Montfort. Yesterday we talked about his childhood and how he studied and then became sort of an itinerant missionary preacher. We heard about his success with the soldiers at the garrison at La Rochelle, and now we'll listen to the second example. St. Louis de Montfort's extraordinary influence was especially apparent in the matter of the Calvary at Pontchâteau. When he announced his determination of building a monumental Calvary on a neighboring hill, the idea was enthusiastically received by the inhabitants. For 15 months, between 200 and 400 peasants worked daily without recompense, and the task had just been completed, when the king commanded that the whole should be demolished and the land restored to its former condition. The Jansenists, or heretical sect, had convinced the governor of Brittany that a fortress capable of affording aid to persons in revolt was being erected, and for several months 500 peasants, watched by a company of soldiers, were compelled to carry out the work of destruction. Father de Montfort was not disturbed on receiving this humiliating news, exclaiming only, "Blessed be God." This was by no means the only trial to which Grignon was subjected. It often happened that the Jansenists, irritated by his success, secured by their intrigues his banishment from the district in which he was giving a mission. At La Rochelle, some wretches put poison into his cup of broth, and despite the antidote which he swallowed, his health was always impaired. On another occasion, some malefactors hid in a narrow street with the intention of assassinating him, but he had a presentiment of danger and escaped by going by another street. A year before his death, Father de Montfort founded 2 congregations, the Sisters of Wisdom, who were to devote themselves to hospital work and the instruction of poor girls, and the Company of Mary, composed of missionaries. He had long cherished these projects, but circumstances had hindered their execution, and, humanly speaking, the work appeared to have failed at his death, since these congregations numbered respectively only 4 sisters and 2 priests with a few brothers. But the blessed founder, who on several occasions shown himself possessed of the gift of prophecy, knew that the tree would grow. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Sisters of Wisdom numbered 5,000 and were spread throughout every country. They possessed 44 houses and gave instruction to 60,000 children. After the death of its founder, the Company of Mary was governed for 39 years by Father Mulot. He had at first refused to join de Montfort in his missionary labors. "I cannot become a missionary," said he, "for I have been paralyzed on one side for years. I have an affection of the lungs which scarcely allows me to breathe, and am indeed so ill that I have no rest night or day." But the holy man, impelled by a sudden inspiration, replied, "As soon as you begin to preach, you will be completely healed." And the event justified the prediction. St. Louis-Marie Grignon de Montfort was canonized by Pius XII in 1947.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.